Okay, thank you very much for joining today's session. So we've started a new unit, which is innovative technologies and connected devices. So in our previous session, we introduced, we looked into understanding innovative development in technology. So we looked into understanding what are these emerging technologies and how they're changing our lives and the way we live. So we also analyzed them. We had a range of innovative technologies, and we compared them, and we looked into what are the advantages and also what are the disadvantages, like the challenges that we'll be facing when it comes to implementing this technology in our day-to-day activities. So for today's session, we're now going to understand the impact of technological innovation on the computer industry. So we're now going to look into our learning outcomes. We'll also cover our merit task, and we also have a distinction task. So let's just get into our presentation. Presentation mode. Okay. So learning outcome 2, understand the impact of technological innovations on the computer industry. So what are we going to achieve today? So over the past few decades, we now know that computers industry has undergone massive transformations due to the technological innovation. So we've gone from bulky mainframes, which was in the past, to cloud-based solutions, where this industry has grown more powerful. We have more connectivity, and it is very important for our everyday life. So let's now look into these benefits that we had over the past decades. So we can look into the rise of cloud computing. So we know now businesses have moved from local premises servers into cloud hosting providers. So this is an emerging technology where we can now see that cloud computing, where has now reshaped our computer industry, and this changed the way that our data is stored, the way it is accessed, and how it's also manipulated. So instead of relying on, as I mentioned, local servers, everything is now stored in the cloud, and there are big tech companies which are providing these cloud solutions, such as some of them are AWS, which is Amazon Web Services, Microsoft Azure, Google Cloud, even many other providers, but I'd say these are the three biggest ones. And what is the impact of this? Companies are now reduced the cost of hardware and infrastructure, so they don't need to have these local servers anymore. This also enables global cooperation, remote work and access, and it also gave them rise of as a service model, as we all know, which is software as a service, which have now changed the way how our software is sold and used. When it comes to development of AI, we now know that with this technology, improved how computers operate by allowing them to learn. These can now be trained and they can also solve problems. AI is now embedded in every operating system, cybersecurity, software design, and user interfaces. So what is the positive impact of AI? Is that now we have operating systems that are much more smarter, allows IT professionals or end users to perform the task in a better way. And this is through the help of AI assistants. So we know AI now automates our routine tasks, such as updating, maintaining, and threat detection. So when it comes to miniaturization and portability, we now know that thanks to these innovations in hardware engineering, computers now have become much more smaller. We've seen how we used to have these massive frames, and everything is now embedded into much more thinner laptops, tablet, and smartphones. So the positive impact for this is that we now have portability, where we can now they're much more handy, and we can now travel and have access to technologies anywhere we're going. Also, there's a rise of ultrabooks and mobile computing, which has also changed the hardware design priorities. Open source and community innovations. So we now need to see, on the other hand, where we now have a major shift which has come from open source softwares like Linux, Python, and GitHub, where instead of now relying on slowly on the big tech companies, our computer world can now benefit from a large amount of communities. The positive impact of having open source and communities is that we have now great innovation through collaboration and shared development. This also have a lower cost for business and individuals. Cybersecurity advantages. So with these emerging technologies, we now have an increase of innovation, which has now also increased the threats. So we know that in this industry, which has now had to adopt quickly to address cyber threats, and the positive impact for this is that we're going to have security, which is now integrated at every level, from our BIOS to the cloud. We now have regular updates, biometric access, and encryption, which have become more standard. Also, new emerging technology is green computing, where we're now looking into sustainability. So with environmental concerns have also influenced our computer industry innovation. So this has now pushed for energy efficiency processes and e-waste recycling, which all lead to our sustainability case. So the positive impact for this is that we now have more devices which are using low energy, that they're very much low energy consumption, and they are also eco-friendly material. So we now know that cloud will now provide real data center powered by renewable energy. So to summarize, now we can see that these advancements have made computing more accessible, powerful, and intelligent, but they've also introduced new challenges in cybersecurity, ethics, and sustainability. So for our learning outcome one, we're now going to explain the impact of technological innovation on the way computer systems are used and supported. So what do we mean with explaining this impact? We're now going to see that technological innovation has had a major impact on the way computer systems are used and supported. So when we're now thinking about how systems worked even just a few years ago, we now know that computer is now much more different. So we know that computers are no longer just standalone machines, which they used to perform basic tasks from a human intervention. Now the most central and nearly even function in both personal and professional life. So we can now see how this innovation has changed the use and the support. So let's look into explaining each of them. So we now have a very big shift on cloud-based systems, where one of the biggest changes has become from the rise of cloud computing. So what are the positive impact? We can access our file and application from multiple devices. The IT support has shifted from fixed software locally to managing cloud access, permissions, and data backups. We also update the updates happens automatically in the background, which are now reducing downtime and the need of manual installation. With the growth of remote access and mobile use, this now we're looking into laptops, tablets, and smartphones, which are just as capable as desktop PC tasks, which have more an improved processor, a better wireless connectivity, and a much more light operating system. So the positive impact for this is that users like us expect to work on the move. So the systems must support mobile and remote access. So this is a huge impact where we can now support teams which deal with multiple devices type, operating system, and the network configuration. Automation and AI support when it comes to this technology, we now say that this has now become much smarter thanks to AI and automation tools. So things that used to take a lot of hours to get done can now be done in less time. So chatbots and AI-based virtual assistants also helps to support queries instantly. Automated scripts can now run diagnoses and fix simple problems without human intervention. They now also support staff which are focusing on complex issues instead of basic troubleshooting. And with the increase of focus on cybersecurity, we now know that as more data is stored and accessed online, protecting it has become much more complex. So we now know that innovation in cybersecurity has changed how computer systems are supported. The positive impact for this that we're now going to have multi-factor authentication, biometric logins, and encryption, which are now more common. We can now support teams that handle password reset, access control, and system security, audit, and so on. So another benefit for this is that we have a smarter, more user-friendly interface, where with our nowadays modern operating system, software application, and even hardware have become more user-friendly. Touch screens, voice command, and intelligent design mean that we can now do more stuff in less time. So the positive impact for this is that we can now support requests from how to use software, and now less common as systems are easier to learn. So documentation, video tutorials, and self-help portals allows users to solve problems without raising tickets. To summarize this learning outcome, we know that as a users, we benefit from faster, easier to use tools and access to the data from anywhere. But from a support perspective, teams now need to be skilled in cybersecurity, cloud services, mobile tech, and remote management. So now we're looking into describing ethical issues relating to technological innovation in computing. So as computing technologies, as we know, continues to develop to a very rapid pace, we've now become more aware of that this innovation doesn't just bring benefit, it also raises serious ethical questions. So what are these ethical concerns that are raised? We now look into from how data is collected to how algorithms make decisions. So these issues affect individuals, business, and societies as a whole. So in our view, anyone working with technology, whether as a user, developer, or support professional, need to understand the ethical impact of their actions. So with data privacy and consent, we know that one of the biggest ethical concerns in computing is data privacy. Within the rise of cloud storage, social media, smart decision, and tracking software, where we have a huge amount of personal information that are collected daily. So what are going to be these our ethical issues? We now have many people who don't realize how much the data is being collected and how it's used. So we now know that some companies gather and use this personal information without proper consent, which is both unethical and in some cases illegal. When it comes to artificial intelligence, the ethical issues is that AI systems have made unfair decisions in areas like hiring, lending, or law enforcement because of biased training data. So the lack of transparencies around AI algorithms work, and who is responsible and when something goes wrong. So when it comes to cybersecurity responsibility, the ethical issues are now that we failing to update software, secure our system, or train staff, which can lead to breaches that exposes sensitive user data. So if a company is careless and lose customer information to the hackers, the trust is broken even if the breach wasn't intentional. So the ethical issues when it comes to environmental impact, we now know that many companies regularly update hardware, encouraging throwaway culture. Tech production often involves unsustainable materials and poor level conditions. When it comes to digital inequality, we now know that the ethical issues related to this is that innovation should aim to include everyone, not just people in wealthy or developed areas. Ignoring this inequity can reinforce existing social and economical gaps. So to summarize, as someone studying or working in computing, we believe it's it's our responsibility to think about the wider impact of many actions when it comes to our ethical concerns. So now we're going to describe the impact. We're now going to describe the impact of legislation and technological innovation in computing. So, as we know, while innovation often lead the way, laws set the rules that developers, businesses, and users must follow. So, in some cases, legislation encourages responsible innovation. In others, it creates barriers that slows things down. So let's now look into this legislation. So we all are aware of data protection law, which is our GDPR, and this was introduced in Europe in 2018, which has had a huge impact on how technology companies handle personal data. So what are these impact? Systems must now include privacy settings, data encryption, and consent mechanism. So developers are expected to build tools with privacy by design. Businesses also face heavy fines for non-compliance. So there are more caution when it comes to data handling. Cybersecurity and computer misuse legislation. So the law, like Computer Measure Act 1990, which this is in place in the UK, and helps which helps from spreading malwares or accessing system without permission. The positive impact for this act is that companies are under pressure to build secure system from the day one. So they also have ethical hacking and penetration testing, which have become standard practice to stay compliant. So we now know that innovation in cybersecurity tools has grown to keep up with threats. Intellectual properties and copyright laws. So we now know that law that protect intellectual properties affect software development, digital content, and even hardware design. What are the impact for this is that developers must ensure they have the right to use or adapt code, software, or images. Licensing restriction can limit what companies can do with certain technologies. Open source platforms offer more freedom, but they still require legal awareness. Accessibility and inclusion law. We now know that legislation like Equality Act 2010 in the UK requires that digital services are accessible to people with disabilities. What the positive impact for this is that developers must build websites and software that work with screen readers and assistive devices. So it has encouraged innovation in adaptive technologies like speech to text or high contrast interfaces. So we now know that inclusion has become a legal responsibility, not just a good idea. Regulation and emerging technologies. So the law are now being developed to regulate AI, facial recognition, biometric data, and automated decision making. So the impact is that tech companies need to be more transparent about how the algorithm works. Developers must avoid discrimination, bias, or unfair treatment in automated systems. So to summarize, while some many see legal rules as barriers, we see them as a way to make technology safer and more sustainable. So we've now come to our merit task, where we're going to have an assessment of a recommendation, AI and AR in retail. So we're now going to recommend a retail business which adopt an AI-powered product. We're now going to have recommendation engine alongside augmented reality, which features for virtual product trials. So this was aimed to improve customer experience, increase engagement, and boosting sales. So after further reflection, we've now assessed both the benefit and drawbacks of this recommendation. So what are going to be the pros? The pros, we're now going to have enhanced customer experience, where AI personalizes the shopping journey by showing related suggestion based on past browsing or purchases history. So the impact for this is that customers are more likely to find what they want and feel confident in the purchase. Another pros is that we now have increased sales and conversion rate when customers get tailored suggestions and can visualize product. They tend to buy more and return less. So with the use of AI, this will now learn from our user data and improve over the time, and also becoming even more efficient. And what the impact for this? That we now have higher conversion rate, and fewer abandoned carts. Another pros is that we have brand differentiation, where using cutting edge tech will now help us to and will now help our brands to stand out. Customers might choose the retailer over others simply because of the ease and novelty of the shopping experience. What the positive impact for this is that it's now going to strengthen customer loyalty and improve brand image. So, what are the cons of our assessment? We're now going to have high implementation cost. We're developing AI engine and augmented realities apps. We now require significant upfront investment, both in terms of money and skilled staff. So what are the risks for this? If the business doesn't see a return quickly, this can become a financial burden. The challenges for this, we're now looking into smaller retailers, which find it apologies for that. Um, Smaller retailers are going to might find it harder to justify their spend. Another negative impact is our data privacy and compliance risk, where we know that AI systems rely on user browsing habits, past purchases, and personal information. So this isn't handled properly. It can lead to privacy violation or non-compliance with data protection law like GDPR. The impact for this is that we now have legal consequences or loss of customer trust in data, which is mismanaged. So the support required for this is a stronger cybersecurity and data management policies, which need to be in place. And another negative impact is the technical complexity. So not all users will find AR feature intuitive. So some customers might not have compatible devices, faster internet, or enough digital confidence to use it efficiently. So this will now result in some users that might ignore the features entirely, reducing its impact. So when it comes for the sport, businesses will need to offer tutorials, customer helps, and alternatives. So to conclude, we now know that potential gain in customer satisfaction and sales are going to be significant. So now let's look into our distinction task. We're now going to reflect on them. Now going to reflect on the ethical augmented, which those having the ability to use technologies means that does that mean that we always should use it? So this question raises big issues when it comes to modern computing. So we need to know, just because we can use technology to do something, does that mean we should? So we now have to give our personal opinion. We need to reflect on it. So having the capability to carry out an action using technology doesn't automatically make it ethical, responsible, or wise to do. So technology is powerful, but it doesn't come with built-in ethics. So it's very up to the human being to whether use whether we are users, developers, or decision making, to stop and think about the consequences of using these technologies. So let's look into AI and automated decision making. So one example that stands out to us is the AI in recruitment. So there are systems now that can scan CVs, access facial expressions in interviews, and automatically rank candidates. Technically, the tools works, but that doesn't mean they should be used without serious considerations. So the reflection for this is that this system can carry hidden bias if the training data reflects existing discrimination, then the AI will replicate it even if that wasn't the intention. So the ethical issues are that using AI to make hiring decisions without a human oversight risks unfair treatment or loss of opportunity for certain groups. Facial recognition and surveillance. So another example is facial recognition technology, which is used in airports, law enforcement, and even by some private companies for security. So the ability to track individuals in real time using cameras and databases is impressive but deeply concerning. So what do we need to take into consideration is that now raise questions about privacy, consent, and misuse. So government and businesses might use this tech to monitor people without their knowledge or permission. The ethical issues that we're facing is that there is a risk of abuse, especially in countries with poor human rights protections, and this can be used to suppress protest or target minority groups unfairly. Automation and job displacement. So we now know that automation allows businesses to cut the cost of increased efficiency by replacing human workers with machine or softwares. So from a business perspective, this now makes sense, but it is always there. We need to ask ourselves if it is always the right thing to do. So when it comes to our concern, we need to understand that in some sectors like manufacturing or retail, automation has led to mass redundancy, while innovation is important, so is social responsibility. When it comes to ethical issues, this should be a business priority profit over people's livelihood just because it can. So we now have to think if it depends on whether retaining support or gradual transitions are offered to affected staff. So we're now looking into the slippery slope of technological dependence. So we also have the ability to use AI and smart system in education, healthcare, and even parenting. So these tools are used, but over reliance on them can be dangerous. So what are we looking? What are going to be our major concern? This, when we left machines to make decisions, to make too many decisions for us, we now have the risk of losing critical thinking skills and personal responsibilities. So ethical issues: should we let algorithm raise our kids, diagnose our illness, or guide our education just because it is available? So this is a major concern. This is something that we should reflect on it. So everyone has their own opinion, and technology should support human decision making, not replace it entirely. So to conclude, we now reflected on this. So being able to use technology doesn't mean that we always should. So ethical decision making involves considering the impact on people, society, and the environment and future generation, not just whether the benefit of the work. So it's easy to get excited by what is possible, but we need to be responsible on the use of this technology, and we also need to ask ourselves what are the benefits, who might be harmed, and also the fairness of using them, and also what are the long-term consequences. So as someone preparing to work in IT sector, we now believe that the right path isn't always the fastest or the most efficient. So it's one that combines technical ability with more responsibility. So this was everything for today's session. Is there any question for me?
Thanks, Henry. Henry, oh, sorry. Thanks, Victor. Sorry, yeah, got the last year's name mixed up. No, I think that's all been pretty clear. It's been really interesting. No, thank you. That was all really clear.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much, Jonathan, for joining me. So if there's no any question, I'll see you on our next tutorial, which is next week, Saturday.
Yeah, brilliant. All right.
Have a good rest of the day and enjoy your week.
You too, Victor. See you next week.
Okay, bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.